To this special statutory meeting that will be resuming from our March 11th meeting time to discuss our levy rate schedule. Mr. Chris, if you would, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. Thank you, board members. Let the record reflect all 5 board members are present this evening. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Fridley.
Good evening. How's everybody today? Before you have our proposed levy rates that have been approved by gosh, I forgot we had a new one, our state auditor, Mark Hunt's office, in accordance with the laws in effect for West Virginia. We used the current assessed values that the auditor or the county assessor gave to me, and he has increased all of our county assessments to 80%. So there is an increase this year in our assessed values. The auditor's office did contact me. I had made a slight error on our proposed sheet that did not include the TIF information on page 3 of the levy order and rate sheet. I've included that now, and they are here for your approval. And in the past, currently we're sitting at 76% of taxes collected for this current year. So we're right on track to collect 100% of what we said we would. Prior year, we've collected 105%, and the year before that was 102% of what we had projected. So, Coach Ray, you got 7 questions?
Well, she's hard on you, Coach.
Hey, she always has been. That's good.
Oh, he tried to get me.
All this does
so.
give me headaches sometimes.
All right, so we've heard the proposed levy rates from Ms. Fridley, very thorough. She did mention that the assessor did raise rates from 60% value assessment to 80%, I believe.
Yes.
And that's being conducted for the whole county now, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So any questions for board members?
Yes.
If-
You did a great job.
If there's no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you, Mr. Groom. Thank you, Mr. Chris. Any final questions or comments? If not, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Rates are approved. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Thank you, Coach Ray. Thank you, Ms. Whitlock. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Paul. Great job.
Okay. We're ready to go again, board members. All right. Good evening. Welcome to our regular session of the April 15th, tax day, right? Fayette County Board of Education meeting. And I will lead us in the pledge this time if you'll join me. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, board members. Again, let the record reflect all 5 board members are present this evening. No public delegations or comments, so we'll get right into our 1000 series with Ms. Kincaid-Clark.
Hello. Scorecard time on the front page. I'd like to bring your attention to the last 3 months of our enrollment, which tends to be kind of hanging out about the same number. We're starting to see a little bit of an increase now in our number of work orders in both technology operations and specialists. Primarily February was, remember, a lot of snow days, and so I think that's why you see a little bit more of an increase there. We are really seeing a lot of people, or our specialists, marking down what is it they're doing with our teachers. So at some point, we'll try to capture some of that information and provide it to you at a later date. We've been very steady with the number of employees we have. Mrs. Dow has been working very hard. She's brought our numbers down from 45 professional postings down to a low of 27. So kudos to her. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a future one back.
That's right. That might be 26 any moment. Yes. And then we do see a little bit higher absence rate there with March, both for professional and for service, compared to the 2 months previous to that. Again, we did have a good deal of snow days, both in January and in February, but still, that's a little jump there. So that's the first page. Good news on the second page. I'd like to point out that attendance rate, if you look across there from August to now, and you look at our base was 91 and then 92. So as long as the numbers continue to trend like they're doing right now, you'll see nothing is below 92. Everything is 93 and above. So that means at this point, with only 2 months left of school, we are going to be above the 93% mark for attendance. So even if we had, well, I guess if we had 0 for the next 2 months, it would be bad, but I don't think that's going to happen. So we look to be very much on target, and our big challenge is going to be to try to match that number, make that number better the following year. Mrs. Hedrick there's got her a lot of work to do for next year. The other nice thing to see, which is it fluctuates quite a bit, and sickness was a big issue, certainly in February. If you'll take a look at the chronic absent rate, our goal was 23, or we ended last year with 23.03. If you come across there, we only see one number that's 23, so all of those numbers are below 23, which means we should end the year below our chronically absent. This is the time chronically absent numbers will continue to climb, of course, because as students have missed, and she's reported them across the street, we start to see those kinds of things go up. But if you'll take a look at the one right underneath that, sometimes that can involve dropouts, and you'll notice we've not had a big jump in dropouts. So we have no dropouts for the month of March. So we are still below our target of 22. We're only setting at 17 right now. Now, we could have 5 in April. So, I mean, we still might pass that one because, again, you might have someone who has had truancy issues and they're 17 and above, and they may choose to drop out. So that's a target we might miss.
Do you have it normally in April?
Do what?
Do we have that normally in April?
No, not
At
always.
the end of the year, they wouldn't drop out, hopefully.
Well, she works really hard to keep them from doing it. We've got a lot of stopgaps in place to prevent dropouts, and like we've said several times, they can always drop back in.
Yeah.
So they do have some options there, but ultimately, typically speaking, you're going to see more of an uptick there in October and November because she's chasing people down. She's trying to make sure and see that those names that are showing up, but they're not coming to school, did they just transfer to another school system? Did they become, homeschooled, or, where are those kids? So you're always going to see an uptick in September, October, and November of dropouts because those are those students who have just not been coming to school, period.
March is always a challenging month, too.
It can be.
To add that, because we don't have much of a break. You end at the end of
Yes.
February, and you don't have much snow usually in March, and so you end up with a long stretch until we hit our Easter break this week, so that's kind of a long stretch.
They're all
Ms.
being
Hedrick.
helped because March is our biggest month.
Yeah.
It has been.
They've been a lot of sicknesses.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
On dropouts, or when you're looking for them, if someone says, well, I'm homeschooled, is there any way to verify that? Can you really verify it?
Yes, sir.
How?
They have to submit a notice of intent, a homeschool notice of intent. They also have to submit a copy of their high school diploma or GED equivalency in the state of West Virginia. Once they submit that, then we don't get to approve it, we process it, and we have to use that verbiage, we process it. And then we just have to wait for them to submit the grades 3, 5, 8, and 11 portfolio or national assessment.
Does it continue to be easier for someone to go on homeschool and not really verify much?
Yes, sir.
Does that become easier?
Yes, sir, I would say it reflects pretty much, when we had the open forum here,
Yeah.
that discussion, I would definitely reference that, because.
It's gonna become easier probably, isn't it?
Yes, sir, and they are still running from truancy to that.
And the State Department is gonna spend $800,000 to create a portal so that homeschool can report online. And it would cost $700,000 a year after it gets enacted, right? That went through, right?
I haven't.
Well,
I don't know that for sure, but
$800,000, it kind of made my ears prick up when I was writing and heard it. And then $700,000 a year, every year after that is what it cost.
No,
So
we're out of money.
I
Man.
know, you think about PEIA and all the other issues that we're not gonna have money for, but I don't know how long it'll take and how if they aren't gonna, and not they, meaning all of everybody in homeschool, I don't mean that, but the delinquent people, as far as their reporting delinquencies, I don't think that's a step to improve that. I think it's another step to make it more lenient. That's just my opinion. I don't know what you all heard about it or if we have any details, but I know it's a huge sum of money to spend on not the majority of students that we're trying to educate.
And our parents, our homeschool parents in Pitt County, we said this back when we had the open forum, and I think
Right.
it needs to be said again, because I know that Mr. Hickline and I, we talked about that, Mr. Hogan and I, we talked about that. Our homeschool parents that do a very good job, they do an amazing job. And they work with us, and they call, and they ask
Right.
questions, and they want what's best and better for their kids. So kudos to those that are
Those
going
who do right.
That do it right.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And for the right reason.
Yes, sir, and for the right
And for the
reasons.
right
and for the right,
reasons.
that's a good way to put it, for the right
For
reasons.
the right reasons. And I've met a lot of homeschool kids in a lot of the different, at teen court, there's several kids in homeschool, there's several kids in the 4-H Leaders Club, several kids in 4-H, they're out there being participants in the community and with other school groups, so anyway, I do see that a lot.
There's some do a good job, like you say, Ms. Whitlock. We have some homeschool parents who do the right thing,
Yes,
but we have some too that are bringing a bad rap to the homeschool.
yes.
Yes.
sir.
Yeah. Well, and I think the public, the public's ability to enter that homeschool situation, our charter school formats, the virtual school formats, once we watched the pandemic and we watched that growth where there was, I would say, more irresponsibility has occurred. And I think that's really what it comes down to, more irresponsible choices that are being made so somebody can avoid,
Deaths.
yeah.
Actually, deaths, yes. But to spend $800,000 and then $700,000 a year after on that segment of our kids, it just seems like a lot of other things wonky, the wrong direction.
And would I be too skeptical to think that it may not work?
And it may not, and you think it's really gonna cost $800,000?
Good question.
I think you're okay with that.
Ms.
Mr.
Hedrick, I was
Gray.
going to ask, with the dropouts, so we're halfway through April. Do we have a pulse on where we may end up with April, or is that truly something where we will not know until the month is concluded?
I think that, I agree with Ms. Kincaid Klein very much. Our target number was, below 22. I hope and I pray, I don't think that we're going to go over that. We are going to have a couple more.
Okay. That those will hit April, is what you're saying?
Well, I go tomorrow to meet
Okay.
with the family.
Okay.
And, but the schools, the three high schools, they're working exceptionally hard to try everything that they can to make sure that the students are being educated and that they are going to school so that they can earn that diploma.
Okay.
So they're, right now is the time that they're really kicking in overdrive.
On behalf of myself, if you put the two Hedrick sisters on any task, I won't go any further. You're going to get a level of intensity that
And not in school as much in February that we were in March. You can see the referrals specifically took almost doubled. However, if you look at our total at the end, we're still well below our number for OSS, and we're still well below the number for disciplinary referrals. I suspect that we're going to end the year below those two numbers. So again, I don't know that it's when I look back at the number, I don't recall if I chose 10% as a reduction, or if those are just the numbers, I'd have to go back and double check. Those might be what we ended on last year. Because last year, we did not, we increased last year. So hopefully, we've gone back to 2 years ago and kind of made some shifts. And a lot of that, again, we have to give kudos to our schools, working really hard with PBIS, really trying to, like when we're off this week, when we come back to school, it's super important that the principals review all of those expected behaviors with our kids on the bus, in the cafeteria, in the hallways, in the classroom, because, kids really shouldn't forget, but they do. And so reviewing those rules, it's been something that we've talked about with them, and it's something that came out in our educational summit, that when we have these breaks and we start the school year, we want to start strong with those expectations and kind of keep those expectations up, especially when it's pretty outside, because a lot of kids want to act up when it's pretty outside. And then at the bottom, if you'll look, homeschooled students and our Hope scholarships, that hasn't really changed much from last month. You'll look, it's fairly steady coming across there for sure in Hope Scholarship. I don't know that database gets updated a whole lot is part of the problem, and maybe that's what the $800,000 is for, is to try to update something. But the database, I think, for entry is a bit cumbersome, and I know they've struggled but with the homeschool database. I'm assuming that's why they wanted to invest money. But nevertheless, we were as high back in the pandemic of 700 to 800 homeschool students. We're sitting in the 500s right now. So that's, it's gone up a little bit, but at this point, we're fairly solid with that. And the private schools are just, again, something, it's hard to get a handle on that. She'd have to call around every month. So we're going to do that probably twice a year, if that's okay.
Ms. Klein,
Yes.
the number of Hope Scholarship students, 335, was it March? Yeah.
Yes.
And the number of homeschool students in private school, more than likely at 335, is either in the homeschool numbers or the private school as well, isn't it?
Yes.
So, those numbers, okay.
Yeah, most of the Hope Scholarship, she gets calls all the time. Anytime someone wants to go homeschool, they have to go, they do work with your attendance director. We get a lot of questions about, can we enroll for a short period of time in your virtual program so we can get the Hope Scholarship and drop out? And, we're trying to battle through that and try to be respectful of the parents and their wishes to do things a certain way. But that's it's starting to take too much time out of the attendance directors. And you can see she's done a very good job, but wonder what she could do if she didn't have to spend her time working on Hope Scholarship numbers.
They're expecting the Hope Scholarship to really
Oh, yeah,
increase this next year and the following year, big time.
yes. That is my understanding.
No money for us to lose.
they opened the door a lot wider, is what they did.
Yes.
They're doing everything you can.
And still, the majority of those are taking virtual courses through out-of-state vendors, correct?
Yes.
That's a big issue.
Do we have any students with Hope Scholarship that are doing a charter school or another venue and then coming into our FIT program?
Yes.
So we do have some of those.
Homeschooled, yeah, because again, we don't ask them if you're homeschooled, are you also Hope? But yes, those kids who come to FIT, we don't get a tremendous amount, but we do have some that come to
We do
FIT.
get credit for them
Yes.
being a student with us a
Yes.
half a day.
Okay.
Yep,
And so we get the reimbursement amounts or whatever that the state
Yeah, because
think Paula-
FIT is its own school. It has its own population now. It's separated in WEVIS. It's more than just, it's an actual number now. It has more than just, it has different meaning than what it used to have, so.
When I was being a little bit stubborn, Superintendent Black called me on the phone on that topic and assured me, her and Delegate Tony assured me that they were making sure that we received our reimbursements. Because I made that very clear that our reimbursement, she was really good about it. I don't mean that negatively. Michelle was really good. Gary will make sure that those reimbursements come.
Any other questions?
Got a question.
Okay,
On the disciplinary referrals,
yes.
is there any way to determine how many of those ended in removal from school?
Yes,
Is that good in here?
159 of them.
Where's that at? I missed that.
OSS.
OSS.
Yeah, so of the 811 referrals, 159 of them were suspensions.
Oh, I got it now. I know
Yeah,
it's just, yeah. Thank you.
Now, I went back, I was flipping through something, because I wasn't here last time, and I discovered, I have not added ISS on there, and we talked about that at some point, and I have managed to miss that. So I am going to stick the ISS numbers throughout the year, because Mrs. Dooley does report that, so I get that. But I had not put them on here for some reason. I don't know if I had them on and took them, I'm not sure what happened. But, technically speaking of the 811, 159 are OSS, and there were several of those that were ISS as well. But they're not removed if they're ISS, they're still sitting in the school. So, so I do need to put those on there. We did talk about that, and I'm not really clear why I missed that, but I apologize.
Of the 3,805 total,
Mm-hmm,
796 have been removed from the school setting.
yes. Yep. Because remember, a referral can be for anything. A referral can mean that we just want the counselor to talk to them. The referral can be, a disagreement on a playground. The referral can be the kids breaking a school rule, a classroom rule. It can be any of those things. The nice thing, I always tell everybody to keep in mind that when you look at 3,805 referrals, those are a teacher's perception that the code of conduct was broken. And then 796 of them have broken it to the level that we cannot have them in classrooms anymore. So it doesn't mean that there's 3,800 serious violations. Almost all of those are level 1 violations. The number 1 violation is that disrespectful, disruptive behavior. That's a level 1. And that's in 3 different levels now. So it's a little bit, they're trying to break it out so you can see it. But it's, it could be anything. It can be you're chewing gum in class. I mean, principals try to get teachers to understand, don't turn them in for chewing gum. But like, again, if it's a rule that they broke, then they can do that.
Is that the elementary disciplinary bill pass? I think it passed, didn't it?
It did pass.
I believe so.
It did pass, and we'll be in the process of determining. I think we've got a lot of things we have already done in place. Dawn's back there nodding her head, because we have a fairly good system. I think even when we ran into the exclusion from class issue, we were already handling matters and dealing with serious situations. We're not totally out of control here in terms of that issue. I even think that we questioned Delegate Pritt about that particular issue, and Delegate Pritt, who is one of our teachers, had to admit that we were following protocols properly here in Fayette County.
But do you see an increase, the teachers seeing this as another means of, I don't know.
We were very, I say that, Coach, I think the potential exists there. What you're asking me, the potential exists that somebody could become, I think, a little bit abusive or removal of students if it came to that point. Fortunately, up to this point, we have not experienced that at all. Do you agree with that, Dawn and Anna? I know you deal with it every day. My dealings with it, I think they've been very respectful. There's follow-up procedure. There's a procedure to follow. One of the things is, too, when you look at disciplinary referrals, that I want to kind of give a history, and you probably remember the history yourself, Coach. Our elementary schools, for a number of years, did not put any disciplinary referrals in. And then suddenly, we'd have a student get to a middle school level, and we'd be dealing with problems, and they'd say, well, there were no problems in elementary school. But then if you did a little research, well, the teacher had them in a self-contained class, and they didn't really want to write down that Johnny was doing anything he shouldn't do. And you watched that when you were director of schools here in Fayette County, and I think all of us that have been middle school principals got lambasted for dealing with middle schools, and you dealt with it at the high school level and the elementary level on both ends of it, right, Mr. Groom?
Yes, sir.
You've been on both ends as administrator on both ends, and dealt with it. I dealt with it on both ends, too, and realizing what occurred. But I think what you're seeing now is it's pretty true. Our elementary schools have done, I think, a much better job of recording everything from day one, because we deal with children coming from so many diverse environments and difficult situations. We want to keep an accurate record. If you're ever going to deal with a problem and correct the problem, you've got to keep a record.
The other thing I'll say is, when you compare, sometimes those laws that are written at the state level are written from the perspective of counties that don't address certain things. So we've all had this happen. We've gone to our state level meetings and people have said something to us like, well, does your board expel for such and such, or do they do this, or do they do that? The whole state of West Virginia was supposed to create a matrix for your discipline, and out of code policy 4373. Well, we did that the year that it came out. As a matter of fact, we, if I recall correctly, did that before it became a change in 4373. The other thing is you guys, as a board, you have been very, very consistent with your discipline, and so I don't know, I'm not saying we don't have elementary kids who are out of control, because we do. We have elementary kids who have some troubles. But I don't think we close our eyes to it, and I think that's the difference. So I think when you look at what you see at the state level, legislatures are trying to address the problem, because maybe there's other boards or other counties that haven't figured out how to address that yet. Maybe their principals and their superintendent haven't set up a process where that matrix is put into place. And, again, they may just not believe in doing some of those things, and that's fine, having that discourse with their board to discuss it. But ultimately, I think a lot of it's the fact that the five of you have decided that we kind of need to take this look on something and make it be
What I've
consistent.
observed myself, I think our principals are doing, elementary level, are doing a great job, and our teachers,
Yep,
I would say the super majority of them are doing a bang-up job as well. And it takes one or two that people talk about this or that,
well, and
and they're
And
trying to address
I
it.
agree, and we're working hard, because remember, from our last educational summit, a comment was made that we need more work with classroom management in the classroom. And even this time go around, it was classroom behavior, but most of your comments that, for solutions for that revolved around academics, did not revolve around so much that behavior, because I just pulled that data together today. And really what it boils down to is, last year, we put some effort, or this year, from that summit, we put a lot of effort into these new teachers and making sure, and it looks like now we have some action steps to be able to support that following next year. Like, there's several things that came out of that summit that will be responses to that. And again, other boards should consider doing those educational summits. They're very,
Well-
they make writing the strategic plan a breeze.
Well, and I'm going to make a general statement. Probably the hardest thing in the world for any of us to do, including myself or my whole staff that's sitting out here, is to listen sometimes in educational summit, because you got to look at it, and it can be painful when people say,
Yeah.
you need to work on this issue, or
Yeah.
we need to work on this issue. We want to become defensive immediately. The culture and climate work we do. I think probably a lot of counties avoid that because they don't want to hear the results, but a lot of the reasons they avoid it, and I'm going to be fair in terms of making this statement. When you're sitting in the seat of a superintendent, and I'm getting ready to retire, so I can say this, it can be very uncomfortable if your board isn't supportive to make change and to evaluate what needs to change without making it punitive. So when you're sitting in the superintendency and if people complain about something, the board makes it punitive. I don't have a board that makes it punitive. If there's a complaint, or there's a concern expressed in a culture and climate, or there's a concern expressed in an educational summit meeting, when we're doing our education summits, that information is taken back and saying, here's what we need to do with it. Here, we need to change, we need to look at this. It's not punitive in nature. We're not being judged by evaluation. They're gonna fire you this year, Gary, because people are upset about this issue. No, it's more, people are upset about it. What solutions do we have? And I think that really makes a difference. Do you not think so, Anna?
I agree. I mean, again, I think the whole concept of, bringing the stakeholders together in the educational summit and then acting on it is what makes the difference.
Because you're creating ownership.
Yes.
You know, you're creating ownership.
They asked for this to be the solution. Your stakeholders asked for that, you supported that, and we made action on it. That's what you're supposed to do.
What we have to realize is we're in an imperfect society. It's never going to be perfect.
No.
I mean, we live in a society that's out of control and imperfect in nature. We just have to keep on trying to work on correcting
And
those
I think we
issues.
have to stay focused on what our job really is, and it's those children, it's the kids. And, you know, sometimes it's not a pleasant thing that we have to deal with, but we still have to deal with it because, again, our job is to help our kids.
And you've said it a million times, Mr. Brewer, those kids didn't ask to come into the world the way they came into the world. It's our job to try to do our best to help.
So, it's our job to educate them.
And a question.
Okay.
And I do want to talk about our attendance because I've loved watching the March madness with our attendance and watch those principals kind of compete with each other. So I really enjoyed that. And I do think those things make a difference. I did want to ask, though, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe attendance was an issue that we were on the watch list for our
Yes.
accountability
That
measures.
is correct.
That is correct.
So, and that was 2 years in a row.
Yep.
Right, so is that improvement only, or is there a number we've got to get under?
No, we won't be on there this year. I mean, with these numbers, I don't perceive that to be an issue for us. You know, again, every year can be different, sicknesses can take us over, but no, I would suspect that when we finish the year up, that's going to bump us off. There are numbers they want us to get to, but we surpassed the numbers last year, but we didn't make enough progress last year to go, I mean, it's still a lot. I mean, it doesn't look like it's not to go from 91 to 92, but that's a tremendous amount because you're talking about daily attendance every single day. But the big piece, the most important piece, and the state talked to us about this in the superintendent's conference, was really to strive to get that chronic absent number down. And there are departments that we struggle with sometimes, but that is not one. Stacy Losh does an amazing job at the state level, and I have to give her a shout out. She has led the attendance group that Mrs. Hedrick participates in. She has helped us out tremendously, and she's given ideas. You know, they brainstorm every couple months, they get together, and really, that's making a difference. And there's still, like, Ms. Hedrick has all kinds of ideas for next year. We've already kind of tossed some things around that will add to our strategic plan. But those numbers there on the chronic absent rate, we want to get those numbers as close to 15 as we can get them. The state asked us to shoot for 20. And if you come across that number, look, we have 3 months that we're above 20. So they ask us to be below 20. I suspect that we're going to hit below 20. We're going to end with like 20 point something or 19, almost 20, or 21 something. So we should be really close to that. Essentially, they told us that if the entire state of West Virginia dropped that chronic absent number to 20, then their red bar would disappear. So I don't see how we would not come off that watch list.
Very, very pleased with that.
Is that what you
I think
feel
our
like with
board-
Stacy?
Yes,
She's telling you?
yes, sir, I totally agree with what Mr. Gigline said. She's very supportive, and I do like how she works with us.
Yeah.
In our regions, because we have a monthly meeting. And
Yeah, I
she was
slid-
actually at our last monthly.
I slid through at the end of that
Yes,
meeting
you
last
did.
month, and
Yes, you did.
we were down in Beckley, and I was going into the SSE, and they were having a meeting. They were using the SSE office to have their monthly meeting, so.
Yeah, for a board, for us, that's important.
Yes.
That we make those improvements. So I appreciate the hard work.
And we
sure-
celebrate it.
Mr. Gray, I know at our LSIC meetings, I'm always interested to hear, and there's been so many great examples of the strategies that we're using, you know, at the schools to improve attendance. So, wonderful stuff with that.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, no.
Yeah, I just have one more, sorry. With our Promise Scholarship, I see that our year-to-date number is 38.
That was last year's number.
That's last year's number.
Yeah, we will get that data, will come very soon. As a matter of fact, I sent the email out today where all the kids, the portal's been closed off. So the counselors on Monday, when they come back, will be confirming the data that's in the portal, and within a week and a half or some short period of time after that, we'll be able to tell you what that number is.
Okay.
I
We
just-
typically trend around 38, or?
No, last year was a low number. Usually Oak Hill has a little bit higher. Meadowbridge has sort of stayed below 10. Midland Trail is going up and down. I suspect that, I think if I recall correctly, Mrs. Hayes said she was already in the 30s at our LSIC. So I am expecting that number to increase. If I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, the year before that, we were in the 50s, like 52. So, yeah, last year was a sad year. We went down to 38. That was a very, I don't know, that was a low, a all-time low. I don't recall having that few of Promise Scholars. So that was a tough year, but hopefully we'll be closer to 50 this year. And ideally, we want to get that to a much larger number. I would like to bankrupt the state on Promise Scholarship. That's $800,000 we could spend for Promise Scholars. Moms and dads would appreciate that.
Driving, I've spent that money.
Coach, did you have a question too? Oh, okay.
Good job.
All right.
I just want to make one additional comment on attendance, though. I think that, I don't want to shortchange these improvements, because if you look at the battles we've had with every virus,
Yes.
multiple
Yes.
strains of flu,
Yes.
COVID, norovirus, we've had a lot to battle this year, and to have that improvement's really impressive, so.
And I tell you what, there's no, I want to be careful how I say this, there's no tricks to what we're doing.
No.
I mean, if anything, they hold the feet to the fire. That lady right there, she holds the feet to the fire. When people try to come up with reasons or excuses, it better be a legitimate one, or Cynthia's not going to listen to it. So that's a positive thing to say. These are very solid, legitimate numbers. They're what we're doing. Nobody's trying to mask them or do anything different. I'm not accusing anybody in other areas either. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just making a general statement that these are very true numbers, and that's.
And I'm gonna give a shout out to our social workers, because I know that as a principal, I saw their work in my current position as record of attendance, and I know the work that Mr. McFine does with them, and that's one of their goals. But that relationship, that rapport that they are making, and then thus collaborating with me on, it makes a huge difference than me just calling up and saying, hey, you're truant. So when we get to go to the orientations, and we tell them all the time, I'm like, don't avoid me like the plague. If I'm trying to reach you, that's a good thing. That means I'm trying to help you, I'm trying to find out what's going on to help your child.
That's a huge switch.
Yeah.
They're used to getting med calls.
We live in an imperfect world, I said, and they make it a little bit more perfect. That's what they're trying to do, so that's
Well, in defense to the parents, she did do a lot of work with those s'mores at the beginning, or at the start of the summer. Even our parents are coming to us with, I understand this is what I'm supposed to do. Like, we had a parent a couple weeks ago, or a week ago or something, that called, and there was a divorce, and, it was very contentious, and there was another issue at the school, but that parent knew he was going to take his kids out to go on like a hunting trip, and that parent knew, even though he's not maybe as deeply tied to the school as the other parent was, because that's who we sent all the information to, that parent already knew what the rules were. So we did make some headway with educating. There's still people who don't tell us they don't know, and we'll continue to work on that. But I think you'll see when I report the summit information, there's a whole section on parents and communication that, we really need to figure out how to beef up so that we can have these kind of results on whatever that thing might be that we need to address. So, and that works, you can see.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, good way to start off today, for sure. So, moving into our 2000 series, we've got items 2133 through 2135. Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Thank you, Coach Ray. Thank you, Ms. Whitlock. And I'll open the floor for questions and comments.
I do have a question. I have a
Okay,
few,
Coach.
really. But I want to ask this first before I even ask you questions. On employment of service personnel, on page 3 of 3, it's almost to the bottom, the asterisk, the provisions of this policy are entirely contained in the listed statutes and do not constitute any opinion or interest of the Board of Education. What does that mean?
Neola is famous for saying that they write policies, but as that sentence clearly states, they literally, for the most part, copied some of this stuff word for word out of the statute. So all the ones that you're looking at right now that we've dealt with are changes that we had at last year's legislative session. So I'm already
So
behind.
you use question, really. Am I correct? Be honest, I'm honest.
Yeah, and
And what they're
again,
handing us, we're just gonna put it up for public comment,
yes,
because we're required to.
yes.
There'll be no changes, unless the state wishes to change something. Correct?
Well, that sentence is something you can take out. That's not in statute, so it can be taken out. I mean, there are certainly things you can alter in any policy. You have authority to do as a board. But yes, the changes that they have listed in the other parts of this are straight out of code.
Thank you.
And this
I'm
first,
done.
this first portion's going to change.
Yes.
Yeah, so as soon as
So
we
the
get it
GED and
posted,
the, yeah, you won't, cooks and custodians, et cetera, will not have to have a high school diploma.
Yeah, so
That's really modeling.
we do a lot of work and then just to do rework sometimes, so.
And again, Neola didn't release their updates until I got them in December. I'm trying to catch up.
We act we act based on law changes,
Yeah,
even
I
though
did-
policy's
you did
not
change
put in
a couple.
place.
Yeah.
But you let us
But
know.
our actions, like Denise will follow
Yes.
state law, she doesn't
Yes.
worry whether we got the policy from Neola yet.
If there's policy that we can adapt or adjust to make changes,
Yes.
you'll let us know that.
Yeah, like that sentence that's written there, we don't have to have that sentence in there. I mean,
I thought, well, who put that in there?
Neola did.
Well, okay.
And I honestly can't answer as to like what the point of the
I know.
sentence is, I don't know.
I'll just pass by. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? And I don't know how possible it is, but maybe in those situations where it's not per statute and we have more ability to modify and edit, if there's some way to denote that, I
It'd be
don't know,
nice
with an
to-
asterisk or something, so that we can.
Yes.
I knew it's not you. I knew that. I know I was coming from the
Yeah.
outside.
We don't want to make a lot of work in pulling it out, but if there's a way to do it easily, it would be great, so. Okay, so I've got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Nothing on our consent calendar this evening. We've got one item under finance, our accounts payable, item 4055. I'll accept a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Whitlock. Thank you, Mr. Chris. Any questions for Paula or Mr. Hoag? Anything, Paula, unusual we should be aware of? Okay. Paula, do you want to talk about this? I've received this letter on our audit. Have we already mentioned that, or?
We have not.
Okay.
The state Office of School Finance has closed down our audit for fiscal year '24 based on our no findings.
So,
Very good.
Good news there.
Very good.
Very good, good job.
It's a group effort.
Thanks to your staff.
Everybody in this room stays, has something to do with it.
All right, so if there's no other questions, all in favor, signify by aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving to our personnel, not quite as long as we usually have, right? So I think that's good. So we've got items 5251 through 5255, and I'll entertain a motion to accept.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Groom, thank you, Ms. Whitlock, and I'll open the floor if you have any questions or comments.
I have one question. I see, so several of these, like, the superintendent recommends the following, right? And then over here it says pending background check and drug test results. So like if something would come back on the background check, does that come back to us? Like if there would be a decision that was made, like how's that? I guess I
To-
need educated on how that process.
To be
works.
real truthful with you, we usually receive them, and if it falls within the guidelines.
If it's in the interim of, them passing the majority of things,
and us receiving that background check, but if we do have number one, if any of the pendings are still intact, all of the pendings have to be cleared in order for us to issue the contract.
Okay.
And the contract is their terms of employment.
The-
So if.
The only thing is we would remove them at some point, if something would happen, remove them from the, whatever employment is, we'd have to rescind it or remove them at that point and make sure you know. Normally, a background check, if we get them, just want to be honest, if it's a minor misdemeanor, because we get everything. We get everything. Somebody did something 20 years ago, you know, that was minor in nature, very minor. For example, let me give you an example. A teacher might get a DUI when they're in college. Not that we encourage DUIs in college, but they get a DUI in college, they're now 40 years old, and they come to us for employment. According to State Department, according to where we're at, that's not considered what it was at one time. I mean, I'm not excusing that behavior, but not considered what it was at one time. Those were where Denise would usually come to me. We'd sit down, she'd say, are you comfortable with this? Because of the history I've had in terms of looking at them, making sure that we are comfortable with that individual. Not that we encourage, but we're in a situation where that doesn't fall like it used to, like I said. But if we get a drug-related offense, even if it turns into a misdemeanor, those are usually ones that I'll just say, no, we can't do that particular issue. And then particularly, it seems like we still get applicants. They usually don't hit your list because we got a little bit of a warning. Denise has got, well, what did I just say about the Hedrick girls? They're probably going to say something to me about it after the meeting. But they got a little bit of I spy kind of mentality. If they see anything that doesn't match quite right in the beginning, usually Denise is coming up to me and saying, what do you think? It's got a little bit of, let's do a little bit more checking. Or she'll ask me if I know who this individual is. You know, after spending 45 years
Yeah.
here in Fayette County, you begin to know some people or know somebody that knows someone, so I can do a little quiet background check to see where we're at with that individual so that we know what we have prior to the circumstances occurring.
But everybody does do a background check and drug screen.
Question, can they work with kids before the background check comes back? That's why I kind of thought that maybe they would work them, but they cannot be employed until that's completed.
Here's what you're doing. You're approving them simply because if we have a 2-week lull in between meetings, there's no doubt, you know, we need subs in teachers and categories. If we have a 2-week lull in between meetings, you're approving them so that if we get that background check, we have a meeting tonight, and we wouldn't get it on until 2 weeks from now, and we get that background check back tomorrow or the next day, we can put them to work quickly.
And once that contract is issued and they return it, that is whenever they are activated in the substitute call system to be working with our student population.
You know, sometimes in the past, this is in fairness to Denise, sometimes in the past, we deal with people saying it's a slow process. We've tried to make sure that we do everything to close that process up. We worked hard at that because we get that criticism. One of the things, though, we don't want to do is move it so quickly that we find ourselves with somebody in a situation. I think the general public needs to know that, too. We're not doing that on purpose. It's to make sure that we truly understand, you know. I can give you an example of you know, even on something, I mentioned something minor like a DUI from 20 years ago. I usually do some checking, and I know somebody in that neighborhood that knows that person and knows the lifestyle they're leading today. Even though they've got it, knows the lifestyle they're leading today, they're not somebody who's laying out, carrying on all night long. We don't want them in front of our children or working with our children. So we do a lot of checking. You know, I mean, I hate, in what the words of Melissa Harris, she calls it the book of the face. That's what she calls it, the book of the face. It irritates us at times, I can tell you that. Facebook irritates us. But it's good to get on there and every once in a while do a little, some people use another word for it, but do a little checking on that to see what we see on Facebook, what we see on social media about that individual, and see what kind of life they're leading.
And thank God you do.
Yeah.
Because we have in the news almost every day in the last 2 weeks, we've had a story close to us that.
Yeah, and
that didn't
it's
happen.
important that we
Yes.
go, and I've got to say,
Too, when you say it takes too long to be a bus driver, here's why.
yeah, and like I said, the I Spy sisters over here, they got it down pretty well.
All right, any other questions?
Comment, there may be a good reason. Under resignation, fresh curricular duty, I hate to see our kids sometimes left hanging, but a assistant middle school boys, girls track coach at Valley, just, I mean, he just quit. We have a team down there, don't we? Track team at Valley?
I don't know, they, usually the middle school runs on Thursday, I'm usually there Fridays and Saturdays, so.
Anyway, it just bothered me to see that, hadn't really, just, and I will keep Milton up here too. Thank you.
Our man's coaching down at Riverside now.
Left us in.
Our principals, we've talked, our principal's been asked, Coach, and I think they agree with it, because it's frustrating to them. If you get on that phone 6 months before the season begins and begin to question that person, are you coaching this year? You know, to make sure that they can play these games with us real close to season, but try to eliminate that altogether, because that is a difficult situation. And we've talked about getting on that phone, that's part of your guidelines. She's developing those administrative guidelines for the parameters of how we hire people and what we do, so that we don't get caught in the last second with
The
it.
track's a difficult activity for one person to try to hurt, like herding cattle sometimes. Just-
It definitely
They're
is.
everywhere. And I just hate to see that happen to our kids when it comes about, maybe they've got a volunteer that we approve or something, I don't know.
Teacher, would have to be a teacher.
Especially track's tough. So, all right, thank you.
One question on Ms. Mills, who's, I guess, resigning, going to Monroe County. Do we have an art teacher for next year?
Well, obviously, that hasn't been posted yet.
Okay.
There is someone that has expressed interest in the alternative certification process for that, so but that also takes time, it has to
Sure.
be posted. They have to meet prerequisites, but also to the posting guidelines, that job has to be posted at least 10 days before we can consider an alternative or a not-certified teacher.
So I didn't know if, with RIF and transfer still just finishing up, if there's any movement that would take place there.
No, the one young lady that was art RIF,
their
we
season
could not
will be over in
place her
April,
into that,
so
because that
he's-
was the
he's
position that she
fine
was,
with the season.
it wasn't for the reason that we had to impact her, so.
Okay.
But I mean, I definitely, they do, all of the RIF employees do receive our job postings, and she is one of them, so I would, I'll personally reach out and say, it's not the location that you had, applied for initially, but it's in the vicinity.
Yeah, okay.
We'll go to Concord tomorrow, so potentially have some art applicants there.
Good for you.
Probably some.
She was in Glenville last week.
Yeah, and Glenville, we were at Glenville last week on Thursday.
Yeah. All right, if there's no other questions, I've got a motion second. All in favor, signify by aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
You want to keep on going?
Hey,
I knew it's coming.
I think we've had that 7,000 series through the whole
Not
meeting.
7,000's gone. Maybe take it
Okay.
out.
I think we've had it the whole meeting.
Yeah, I
so.
think you probably have.
All right, Mr. Superintendent, what you got?
Just a couple things, just a couple updates. Just so that the board's aware, Tim's not here tonight. Tim, his son's getting married this week in Chicago, so Tim is in Chicago. We're trying not to disturb him. He doesn't do very well at that, Tim doesn't. He's sending emails and running back and forth. Tim doesn't do real well at not disturbing. I think I'd probably have a problem with this entire staff that, what's that?
I said Tim's son's moving from Hyco to Chicago.
Yeah,
That's a culture shock.
He's met a young lady that's working out there, and he's a speech therapist, so he is working out there also,
for him.
so. And I think Tim has been flying back and forth to California, Chicago. He keeps a close tab on his kids and then works here 24 hours a day when he can, so it is. I think I have a problem with my staff here. I don't think any of them really ever take off, and I want to say thank you to every one of them, because they don't ever take off. They're on the phone with me no matter what, and never complain. They might mumble behind the scenes, but they don't ever complain, okay? I'll just leave it at that. They might say, what is that fool calling me for again?
We can evaluate them as well.
The major issue, though, a couple things, just so that you know, I was at Meadowbridge early this morning. Paving is occurring tomorrow morning over there on the paving area. A little frustration. I text him details because I told him I would go there today. Little frustration a little bit. The kitchen's a little behind right now. They're putting the equipment in. I had a conversation with Heath Fain this afternoon after he looked it all over. He spent the entire day there, going through the punch list. Heath is with McKinley, who oversees the project, along with Matt Shamlin from Skanska. And both of them in discussions with me early this morning when I was there, and here's what they don't want to do. They want to force the process to try to hit timelines, but they don't want to rush that process so we don't get high quality. So they had some discussion, Gary. I was talking to the project manager, Bryson Murphy, and so forcing that issue. Again, remember, we don't have to hit a certain date. We keep adjusting that date. It's more about getting quality. We don't want it to be done halfway and leave something or say, that's good enough, that's good enough. You know what I mean? We're not at that point like we've been in other situations where we're operating out of modulars and trailers and everything else as we dealt with that process. So a little bit of an idea. And I entered the Arctic zone this afternoon. I ran over with Andy a little bit to check out the freezer in operation, and it is pretty massive. If you ever want to look at how massive it is, and Andy's looking at operation buys, I did indicate to him, he was at another meeting when Tim indicated that Andy was pretty persistent. Probably drove it a little crazy, but did a great job of putting it into operation. I told Andy that when he got back. We do appreciate his efforts. Our new chef has been out with him. They're looking at menu planning to do some of the opportunity buys with commodities and other things, so that she's been working with cooks, been a real positive turn to start with, and all those things are happening in a very positive way to begin to watch those programs move forward. But the freezer was pretty cold, and real cold, and we had just checked out the units outside, and then beginning to look at one of the things that we've worked with Paula on is some continuing to look at long range down the road. You know, we're looking at what we call redundant systems. We'll probably, if we work on this right, we'll probably be the first county in the state that does what it does. So when you have a compressor go out, the system continues to run. Of course, we have backup unit with this huge freezer now, but our freezers in the schools slowly beginning to modify them to move to redundant systems, so that when one set of compressors goes out, another set of compressors comes into operation. That was Andy being pretty persistent, that was something that he wanted to do. And then, honestly, I've had to listen to my son complain to me, because he deals with the same thing, moving stuff at nighttime, just not making an efficient system. So some long-range goals, and I really have been impressed with Maggie. She's done a really good job so far, and she's gone into the kitchens where the cooks get a little excited when she comes at first, and she reminds them she's not there to give them a hard time, she's there to help them. We're here to do this together, guys. Let's make things better. And I think they've been very receptive, have they not, Andy?
Absolutely. Yeah, she's doing a fantastic job. You know, one thing I mentioned that was kind of behind this vision was providing professional development. And early on, she got into the kitchen and she noticed different pieces of equipment that they weren't using, and she asked them about it. And they were like, well, we aren't sure how to use that. She was like, hey, can help with this. So right now, we have a plan of 5 different trainings that will take place during each of her, targeted 1-month, stints at each school.
And Andy is going to be, I challenged him at about 5 o'clock this morning. I challenged him and then reminded him when I was with him and Maggie this afternoon. Andy is going to put a spreadsheet together of some type to show us, we want to put higher quality food out for kids, but using things like the commodity buys and the opportunity buys to give a higher quality food to our kids, but reduce that cost. And I said, if we want to look at somebody like Maggie being a continual process after the grant, you've got to show the savings on the dollars. And I'll tell the board that right up front. Paula is good when I go into her office and sit down, if I can show her how this is benefiting us, and I do give her credit for that. She does a really good job of saying, how's this benefiting the school system and the children of this county? And that's a positive statement on her behalf. And if we do that, Andy's taking that challenge on. Maggie knows where it's at. I said it right in front of Maggie, did I not, Andy? If you want to keep this job, we got to look at ways that we can produce high quality for kids, using the right buys and those kind of issues, and our scratch cooking and doing what we're doing, working with the cooks so they're happy with it. At the same time, then we can continue the professional development and do what we need to do. So kind of a long-range goal. Coach will have me fired on June 30th, but that's a long-range goal I set forth.
If not before.
If not before. Thanks, Coach. I appreciate those kind words. But to be honest with you, the challenge that we've set forth. And, Matt thinks winter's over. I'll just point out that we're dealing with storms until late last night. Am I right, Matt?
We were.
What is the square foot of that new freezer?
Andy, what is
It's
it?
1,000 square feet.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that storage-wise, is floor space?
That's the square footage, like the
So
floor
it's- you get-
space, it goes up to
well,
9
yeah.
feet tall.
It is a good size rest.
Yeah, it's probably,
Ah.
I was doing the math on it, it's probably about 2 tractor trailer loads that we can fit in there.
Wow.
It's no access.
It's
unbelievable.
maybe as large as this room, if not larger. It's larger than this room.
1,000 square feet.
And I was just, honestly, I walked inside and it was like I had just entered the Arctic tundra or something. It was like, whoa.
I mean, we need to seize
good.
the opportunity, to have a little bit of time where there's no food there, we can do some ice hockey.
Now, how long's that grant for our
Till next spring at this time,
just 1 year?
1 year. So we really got to bust it. I
Can we
did,
apply again for a grant?
I don't think they'll grant another grant on that one, because honestly, most of those are going to be, I'm speaking out of turn, but I think USDA, those are going to be lost at some point, right,
Okay.
possibly?
Sure.
Yeah, we're not sure, right?
We're not sure. I don't want to talk out of turn, but things aren't as solid with USDA right now, and so we've got to take the opportunities we have, and again, the great staff I have out there and every one of them sitting out there are always trying to think about how we make this system better, and the board permitting us to do that, not looking at us like we're crazy, permitting us to make some moves, and we do appreciate it.
Well, when you think about, nobody knows what might happen, but I see a lot more kids eating a lot more school lunches when they look like the ones that we've been seeing on Facebook, and I was honored to have the opportunity to be part of that interview process and get to eat her food.
And
So-
you had an opportunity to see her personality.
Yeah, yeah.
We're going to make sure she comes to a board meeting one night.
Well, once you get the word out that she's a graduate of the VOTEC and Fayette County kid, I mean, I don't think.
And
there's any problem.
in Greenbrier,
We hired a chef for her.
and a Greenbrier apprentice.
Yes,
She
yes.
graduated from their apprenticeship program.
Greenbrier Culinary School.
Yeah, what an amazing individual.
Great pedigree.
But very humble. She does just a kind lady.
Yeah, I don't know if Mr. Hogarth told this story, but indulge me for a couple minutes. When we were interviewing him, one of the things that the chefs who were there had said, they had only seen him online. And she was very humble, and so she didn't, stand out in the, virtual interview environment.
And so he had said, hey, these first two are the ones we really got our eyes on, because they had, just more, enthusiasm for their virtual interview. But then when we got there, there were some challenges that immediately emerged. What he did was he threw a second recipe on them, and then he would come by and talk to them to see if they could chop while they talked. And that threw some curveballs into their mix that they weren't able to keep up with. Whereas when she stepped into the environment, Crystal Arbach, who was those first two chefs, she had gotten a little bit frazzled and was, kind of struggling to keep up because they were kind of spinning out of control a little bit. And so then when Maggie showed up, she was very calm and collected and kind of brought the temperature back down, calmed, things down so that Crystal felt really comfortable with the whole process. And then she really outshined, the other candidates. So it was a really impressive, interview process. I think it was a lot more challenging than she was used to in that environment.
When you have an opportunity to talk to her, I've just had a couple of little stretches, not as much as Andy does, just a couple little things when she's been around, I made a point of, because I'm kind of shy, I don't talk to too many people,
Lightning's gonna hit.
But had an opportunity to talk to her and ask questions. My kids always say, Dad, why do you ask so many questions of people? Because I want to know about them.
That's how you know. That's how you learn.
I want to know about them. And when I talked to her, even today, just when she was with us to go over, look at the freezers and do what she did, to have that conversation, just not realizing the background she's had and how they've worked together in the restaurants she's run. We didn't even know that much. We knew a pretty good idea, but just to continue to talk to her, man, what a diverse background, and no arrogance whatsoever, just kind of.
We would love to taste your food.
Well, here's what I said to Andy. He said he was going to lunch, he would meet me after lunch. I
We
said,
can go to a school and eat it.
I accused Andy today of making Maggie cook for him at lunchtime. She didn't, but I accused him of it. She did not, but I accused him of it. Did I not, Andy?
Uh-huh.
I said, Andy, she's not to be making you lunch, Andy.
All right, Mr. Hoag, anything else?
That's all.
Okay. Coach, I know you had him on the timer, I'm not
Tell
even
you
going to ask.
something, he's about as short as, Michael Tower.
All right, with that, Ms. Dooley, I think we have some items in legal.
Two, don't you? Two.
Okay, so, in accordance with 6-9A-4.2A and 6-9A-4.3 of School Laws of West Virginia, the governing body of a public agency may hold an executive session for discussion of employee discipline and for student discipline.